Yeah. Boogie like Benson, I'm a who that. I'm a who that. Long as I'm living, I'm a who that. Lose or winning, I'm a who that. Sports Coma, yeah, this is where we do that. Where we do that, where we do that, where we do that, where we do that, where we do that. Boogie like Benson, I'm a who that. I'm a who that. Sports Coma, this is where we do that. Where we do that. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Somebody please better help. Running this thing like Elf. I thank God every day I'm not a felt. Go to YouTube Live with Big Q and the guys. If you ain't ride or die, the bandwagon get flipped. Been marching in, that was way for the ring. I was yelling out your chain for the championship. Bucking on town, duck down. Falcons pluck, get shut down. Panthers ain't much touchdown. The vision really belong to us now. So much hate on the Saints, you could probably tell. Ever since Bounty Gate hit the NFL, when things seem fishy, then you probably smell the crooked referees on Roger Goodell. Yeah, fucking like this, and I'm a who that. Every day I'm living, I'm a who that. Lose or winning, I'm a who that. It's the Sports Coma, this is where we do that. Where we do that, where we do that, where we do that, where we do that, where we do that. Boogie like Benson, I'm a who that. It's the Sports Coma, this is where we do that.
You're listening to the Sports Coma with Big Q and the guys on the PRO Media Network.
All right. Shout out to the fam, man. Shout out to you guys. Appreciate y'all being on a live stream like I've been saying for some time now. Welcome. You know, rocking with the Sports Coma with Big Q and the guys, where we have intense, entertaining, educating, and enlightening sport talk from your favorite sports fam. Shout out to the rest of the entire Who Dat Nation. Appreciate you guys joining me for this late stream. I won't hold you for very long. We'll go over some camp news, notes, and items. Shout out to the fam. Appreciate all of y'all. Please feel free to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. By all means, feel free to share the show on your social media feed. Much love to the fam on this hump day edition of the Coma. Shout out to the fam. So we'll cover that. Today we'll go over the news, notes, and items as provided by Saints News Network's John Hendricks. Shout out to Brother Kyle T. Mosley and Brother Bob Rose. We'll also cover an article from Bob talking about a Saints kicker situation. Now, it's a lot of stuff covering and talking about what's going on with the Saints in terms of what they're going to do with the kicker situation. And Peter King is the one that kind of sparked this stuff. I don't know. I don't understand what's the big hubbub is about here. To me, we're not going to get rid of Blake Group A. Shout out to Blake Group A. He's done a fantastic job in training camp. But listen, if we talking about deep playoff runs and championships here, Luke Will Lutz hadn't done enough to compromise his position. You see what I'm saying? He's on a 1-year deal. I think this is the last year of his contract here. And we can still have our cake and eat it too. We can still keep both of these guys. So I don't know if the big hubbub's about, but we'll talk more about it when we cover that particular article. All right, so let's jump right into it, fam. We'll start off with the Saints training camp day 19 notes and observations. We'll start off here from John Hendricks scoop right here. We talk about the attendance, and of course, we know that Jimmy Graham, made an appearance there. And let's start with the return. It's probably the bigger news of the day is Laddie Daddy Smoke Monday. Nico Lalos, Kelvin Throckmorton, and Jimmy Graham were all out there today, right? So Jimmy Graham was back after his series of doctor appointments. It's good news to see him after he's, according to reports, the doctor Amos said he suffered a seizure. So it's good to see him back at camp doing his thing. Lattimore, Throckmorton only participated in the individual drills while Graham returned in full. Graham also made a couple of plays out there and ran with the first team some. So it's great to see him back in some capacity after what happened last week in Southern California. So the absence for Wednesday, including Taysom Hill. Of course, it's Taysom's birthday, so happy birthday to Taysom. Also, shout out to my father, man, Papa Q. It was his birthday. Today he made 7-0, so that was pretty big. He had a big throwdown, and shout out to him. Traquan Smith, A.T. Perry, Rashid Shaheed, Kirk Merritt, Darrell Williams, Ryan Conley, Landon Young, Lynn Bowden Jr., Cam Jordan were absent. Now, Perry had an illness while Jordan had veteran rest day. Ramczyk was out there doing stretches before he left the field and did not practice. Brian Barisi left early due to an eye injury. He was being looked at on the sideline after the 7-on-7s getting checked out. and they eventually had left the field. And then the starting looks, Ramchek not participating, so the offensive line had Trevor Penning, James Hurst, Eric McCoy, Cesar Reeves, and Storm Norton. The second pairing had Lewis Kidd, Andrews Pete, Max Garcia, Nick Seldaveri, and Storm Norton again. Going to the third team for anyone interested, but also so Seldaveri flipped to left guard. The line was Mark Evans, Seldaveri, Alex Filstrom, Tommy Kramer, and Chuck Filiaga. For the defense, New Orleans rolled out with the nickel look that had Passanio, Kalen Saunders, Nate Shepard, and Carl Granderson along the line. DeMario, Pete Werner were at the linebacker with Bradley Roby in the slot. Adebo and Taylor were on the outside with Tyrann Mathieu and Marcus May at the safety position. So you see the NASCAR package. Good to see the NASCAR package. Passanio being flipped inside on some reps, and we talked about this, and Passanio playing inside the line, and we knew that'll be really big too, how he's been performing in training camp and in the preseason. Passanio has, since the Saints read up with him this past year, given that them 2 years on this contract, and he's been totally healthy. Passanio's been a beast out there, man. He's looked really revigorated, rejuvenated. He's just handling the business, man. Help covering it up some from Isaiah Foskey, as Foskey is allowed to kind of take his time to get back to where he needs to be, and I think he will. Gain and learn what he needs. The Passanio has been doing a wonderful job. They also used the look of Turner, Shepard, and Carl Granderson. The team would use Demario Davis and Zach Bowen out there as rushers, with Jordan Howden being the extra DB. Now, the one-on-one details, 3 quarterbacks that were in on the one-on-one throws with Jake Hayner, Jameis getting those things kicked off. Derek Carr later joined him. The results as from the 12-yard line to start, they moved up to the 6, and that's when the change happened. So Jontre Kirkland went one-on-one with Alante Taylor, with Hayner there was incomplete. Keith Kirkwood with Anthony Johnson when Winston there was complete inside middle for a touchdown. So there you go. Keith Kirkwood was able to get the best of Anthony Johnson with Jameis Winston there. Quan Baker versus Paulson Adebo Winston in there, another complete left side for a touchdown. So Quan Baker got the best of Paulson. Shaq Davis against Hugo Amadi with Jake Hayner there was incomplete. Jonte Kirkland battling Isaac Yiadom with Hayner there, incomplete. Mike Thomas versus Troy Pride, complete inside middle to the 2-yard line. Chris Olave versus Isaac Yiadom, Carr there was complete inside the middle. Keith Kirkwood versus Adrian Fry, Carr, touchdown. Fry getting cooked. Left Kirkwood ran a nice route going outside, inside, then come back to the end zone. So Keith Kirkwood got another TD. Quan Baker versus Marcus May with Hayner there was incomplete. Shaq Davis versus Anthony Johnson with Hayner, complete for a touchdown. So Shaq got him a touchdown on the one-on-one. Mike Thomas versus Bradley Roby, that was complete for a touchdown. No surprise there. Jontre Kirkland got the best of the rookie Jordan Howden with Carr there, complete for the touchdown to the left side goal line. Great catch by Jontre. Keith Kirkwood versus Hugo Amadi, complete there as well. To the 1, he made a catch despite being grabbed. It was definitely a defensive hold to Keith Kirkwood. In preseason showing up, having some good reps. Team shifts to the 6-yard line. Chris Olave versus Troy Pride, incomplete. Quan Baker versus Paulson Adebo Winston there, incomplete. Jontre Kirkland versus Adrian Fry with Winston there, incomplete. Shaq Davis versus Anthony Johnson, incomplete. Michael Thomas versus Bradley Carr, incomplete. A lot of incompletes. Keith Kirkwood versus Isaac Yiadom with Carr there, complete end zone left, touchdown. So Keith Kirkwood once again cooks. He gets another touchdown there. Go ahead, Keith Kirkwood. Shaq Davis versus Hugo Amadi with Winston there, complete for a touchdown. Says wow from Davis going up over the top to get the catch. Anytime and Hugo Amadi's like what, 5'9"? That's not really a very fair rep. A one-on-one, you have Shaq Davis who's 6'5", a 6'5", 217-pound wide receiver versus Hugo Amadi was 5'9". If he's that tall, a fade left for a touchdown. So just throw it up toward him, man. He gonna go get it. All right. So anyway, Jontre Kirkland versus Alante Taylor, that was a good one. Incomplete. Quan Baker versus Fry again, complete inside middle. Michael Thomas versus Marcus May with Carr in there, incomplete. Chris Olave versus Paulson Adebo with Carr in there, incomplete. And then we transition to the 7-on-7 drills in the red zone. Defensive personnel was Pete Werner, Alante Taylor, Bradley Roby, Marcus May, Tyrann Mathieu, Demario Davis, and Paulson Adebo. Derek Carr went 5 of 6 in the 7-on-7 red zones. Start from the 15-yard line. He completed to Kendre Miller with Pete Werner in good coverage. 12-yard line complete on the curl route to Mike Thomas for 6 yards with Tyrann Matthew in the vicinity. 9-yard completion for a touchdown left side to Chris Olave with Pete Werner and Alontae Taylor in the area. So there you go. Chris Olave getting the touchdown there. From the 6-yard line, it was incomplete. In the end zone, he tried to get Michael Thomas there. Incomplete. 4-yard line, complete touchdown left to Michael Thomas. Went back to him with Alontae Taylor there. And then he makes notes that says it's nasty for the route Thomas ran. He went inside, then cut perfectly to the outside to get free for an easy hookup. And that's them things with Michael Thomas selling on the route. You know, and that's the thing about Michael Thomas, right? He's a very convincing route runner, man. We'll cover it, talk more about that. 14-yard line, complete inside right shot to Keith Kirkwood with Jordan Howden there as well. So pretty good. Jameis Winston came in there. 4-5. The defensive personnel was Jonathan Abram, Lonnie Johnson Jr., Isaac Yiadom, Troy Pride, Nephi Sewell, Jalen Smith, and Hugo Amadi. 12-yard line, he started. Complete curl left to Jamal Williams with Yiadom and Sewell in position. 8-yard line, complete short right curl to Jontre Kirkland, Nephi Sewell in coverage. Good immediate tackle to stop for Kirkland, Jontre Kirkland for a small gain. 6-yard line, incomplete. 4-yard line, complete slant right, left for a touchdown to Jimmy Graham over Troy Pride. Shout out to Jimmy on that one. 15-yard line, complete flats right short to Elvin Kamara with DeMarco Jackson. Hope he bees like a Demario Davis someday. DeMarco Jackson. Jake Hayner, not so successful in those red zone 7-on-7s. He was 1-4. 12-yard line, incomplete. 8-yard line, incomplete. 6-yard line, complete left end zone touchdown. Keith Kirkwood again over Jordan Howden. Kirkwood came down with a one-handed catch, one of the highlights of practice. 3-yard line, incomplete curl right end zone to Lucas Krull. Krull got hand on it, but it was off target. Team series details. 3-team series today with none of the drives being in the red zone. The first series had the Saints offense operating from their own 30-yard line and moving up in slight increments, never passing the 39 for any quarterback. Team series number 1. Carr was 2 for 2. Winston was 2 of 3. Hayner was 1 for 1. Carr series started with a short run to the left with Kendre Miller as Kalen Sanders had to stop for a minimal gain. His first pass attempt connected with Chris Olave deep right, working against Bradley Roby well across the midfield. The next play was a run inside with Kendre Miller to the left that went for a short gain. Then Carr hit Quan Baker on the left curl for a small gain, working against Nephi Sewell. He says he'll point out that Passanio got home for a sack, beating Foster Monroe, and still charts the passes, but in real time, it would have been a sack, so that wouldn't have even counted. Once again, Passanio's flashing. Winston's first pass was a nice deep hook up near the right sideline to Shaq Davis, working against Isaac Yiadom. There was a small bobble by Davis, but he caught it. Jack Heflin saw a little bit more action in place of Brian Breesy, who did apply some pressure. The offense committed a false start before running the next play. An outside run to the left with Jamal Williams that saw Peyton Turner stop him for a loss. Turner made a nice play on the next rep, battling down Winston's pass for batting it down, which was intended for Quan Baker at the line of scrimmage. Winston completed the next pass underneath to Elvin, working against Ty Summers, but would have to be credited. Jack Heflin would have got there for the sack. Now, Hayner's series started with a run to the left for a short gain with Kendre Miller, tripped over Juwan Johnson on the play, but also Isaiah Foskey did a nice job of being there to help on stop the run. So we got Isaiah Foskey sighting at practice. No one was there for the coverage. Anthony Johnson was the closest. Consecutive run plays then happened with a sharp run to the left with Ellis Merriweather against DeMarco Jackson on the stop. Then another one inside left with Adam Prentice from the shotgun that had Foskey make his first contact and stop. So Foskey's showing up in practice this time around. Team series number 2, Carr 3 of 5, Winston 3 of 4. Hayner was 2 of 4. Series started off the offense just from its own 35-yard line. The defense featured the NASCAR package here, so it's also worth pointing out the Saints pumped loud music and crowd noise to try to trip up the offense. Carr's first pass was off the mark in the flats for Elvin Kamara. Pete Werner had a nice coverage on the play. And this is a good little caveat here to get them ready for away games when the crowd's really noisy. Carr then hit Juwan Johnson on the curl for an immediate gain with some yak yardage. He then hit Foster Monroe on the drag route coming right to the left with Alontae Taylor in the area. Demario Davis brought the pressure. The next play we saw pressure just about from everyone, resulting in a low throw intended for Michael Thomas. Carr came back the next play, hit Foster Monroe for an immediate gain on the middle curl route with Davis and Marcus May being the closest defenders. Here comes Jameis. He operated mainly in a shotgun, hitting his first pass in the flats to Jamal Williams. However, Isaiah Foskey, once again, Foskey was there. Have to give him the sack. Jontre Kirkland had an intermediate gain off to the right side and a nice hookup from Winston. The offense then had another false start penalty as it appeared to be Storm Norton moving first, but Andrews also jumped. Winston tried Foster on the middle crosser, but Hugo Amadi made a nice play on the ball to force a pass breakup. The offense then tried inside zone read to Kamara that Zach Bowen blew up on the play for a loss, and then the final pass for Jameis was a successful screen to the right side to Kendre Miller that saw a pretty decent gain. Next series, Hayner, first pass attempt sailed. He tried Keith Kirkwood deep down the seam. He had it been on target, he would likely have been a completion. Ellis Merriweather got inside with a run to the left that was stopped by Smoke Monday on the next play. Good to hear him. And then Hayner completed a pass to John Trey Kirkland on the curl route. He got some yak yardage out of it. Hayner then tried Quine Baker near the left side in the intermediate range, but couldn't connect. Troy Pride also was involved in there. Had a pretty good coverage, and Ty Summers nearly got a hand on the pass. The final play of the series was a quick one short left to Kendre Miller, who turned it upfield for some extra yards on the play. Team series number 3, Carr was 4-5. Winston was perfect. Drive started off the team's 25-yard line, mainly focused on some down and distance situation. Just Carr and Winston got to work. Carr's first pass was a middle curl to Jamal Williams that was dropped. Williams got an outside carry to the left on the next play for a short gain with good run stopped by Lonnie Johnson Jr. and Carl Granderson. The next play saw Nate Shepard and Passanio combined for a sack on Carr after getting through the line. Kamara got run outside to the left the next play, but was stubbed by Granderson and Pete Werner. Carr with the check down on the next play, hitting Michael Thomas on the short left curl. Carr then had a nice hookup to Chris Olave on the third down play on the quick out route to working against Bradley Roby. Jamal Williams got a run to the right on the next play with Nate Shepard and Colin Sanders combining for a tackle for a loss. Carr then had 2 great back-to-back throws, threading a needle to Chris Olave deep right despite having that good coverage from Paulson Adebo. He then had another similar throw to Juwan Johnson for the immediate game, left to middle. Juwan Johnson, another threaded needle pass by Carr with good hands by Johnson on the play. A lot of good stuff happening in practice, man. Winston first snap was a hook up to the right sideline for a short gain to Shaq Davis. Passanio had the pressure, got his hands up, and maybe being able to be in position to make a sack in real time. Once again, Passanio, man. Jimmy Graham then got involved on the next play, getting a sharp pass to the left, getting some yak in the process. Then Winston hit Davis again for a 30-yard plus game out of the slot, working against Isaac Yudom. Next play was a weird sequence. Kyle Phillips got a hand on the pass, but it still ended up getting completed to Foster Monroe on the attempted tight end screen for a minimal gain. Winston went back to Graham on the next play off of play action, hitting him deep left down the seam for a big hookup. Then there was 3 straight runs, with the middle one left by Kendre Miller stuffed short, another left to middle inside for another short gain, and last play was going to be a pass for Winston, but Isaiah Foskey provided the pressure and forced Winston to keep right and scramble. So what we hearing so far, before we get to the general news, a note, and an observation, we talked about Isaiah Foskey flashing. We started to see Isaiah Foskey flashing in practice. It was several plays where he provided pressure to kind of improve, and you see him making some sharp improvements in practice right there, trying to see if getting his head around. We talked earlier about Michael Thomas and how Mike Thomas digs into his routes, if you know what I mean. Mike Thomas comes out of his stance. If the receiver's man-to-man with him and tries to obstruct the timing, Michael just in one fluid motion removes the cornerback out of his way while getting into his route. And if he's running and the guy's kind of backpedaling and give him a little room and kind of trying to stay in front of him, Michael Thomas knows how to, he's a master route runner and sells it very well. He digs into the route violently and then shakes back, knows how to create room. I mean, he works really well at that, man. You watch the tape on him doing it. It's like watching like ballroom dancing. You know what I mean? How his convincing his footwork is and his motions. It's tough to read Michael Thomas because he knows the timing of the quarterback or how the play is supposed to roll out because he is very familiar with those plays. So he knows how to sell and dig into the route, how to cut violently or swiftly, and everything's smooth and fluid, and he doesn't give you anything. You know what I'm saying? He doesn't sell anything to you like some guys, like really good cornerbacks could, kind of look at the guy that guarding, study film on him, find out his tendencies, try to figure him out. Michael Thomas is very smooth. He doesn't give you a lot to work with. Like some guys will signal where they're about to go, or it's just he's a different cat. All right. So anyway, today was very evident how thin the Saints were at running back, wide receiver. We'll see what happens between now and the final preseason game. But 6 were missing between the backs and receivers. Doug Marrone looked like he was ratcheting up the intensity for the offensive line today. He was getting onto some of the tackles today. Thank you, Doug Marrone. Something we have seen in camp before is receivers doing over reps when it doesn't look like or work in offensive drills. Keith Kirkwood was a good example of this. And Keith Kirk was another guy to talk about because Keith Kirkwood is really taking advantage of all the injuries and the things that's happening in the running back room. And by the way, James Washington, who the Saints, I mean, the wide receiver room, by the way, James Washington, who was with the Saints, who was released for Darrell Williams, the running back, he signed, I think, with the Colts. Well, he signed with the Colts. So, Kiki Coty went to the Dolphins and James Washington found a job with the Colts, just throwing that in there. But anyway, Kirkwood's taking advantage of his time. Today he has several touchdowns in the one-on-ones and other stuff that occurred. So Kirkwood is really taking advantage of doing what he's supposed to do in terms of handling the business. So this is one of the best practices of Isaiah Foskey. He's definitely growing here. The film doesn't totally support it. Dennis Allen also said as much. So we talked about it and we went through some of this stuff, and then you realize that Isaiah Foskey is stepping his game up and he's handling business. So Will Lutz is going 5 for 5 in kicks today. He made the extra point. They hit from 39, 41, 44, and 49s. On the contrary, Blake Grupe was 4-5, hitting the extra point, being wide right from 41, then hitting the 44 and 49. Battle is close. And again, if I had to choose a kicker right now, tie goes to runner-up Will Lutz. I don't know what this stuff is about. Lutz, I don't get this. We're not going to get rid of Will Lutz for Blake Grupe, man. We'd be silly too. He's not. It's not really. Maybe I'm seeing it differently, man. I don't see it like this. The Texans plan to play all their starters when they come to the Superdome on Sunday. Really, that's going to be a nationally televised game on Fox. If you didn't know, Michael Thomas still looks good. He's really getting in and out of his breaks well, and is cutting on a dime. And that's what I was talking about. How good Michael Thomas has been in terms of digging into the route. And like I said, if Michael Thomas is healthy, Michael Thomas only plays one way, and that is the right way. He's going to dig into the route. He practices that stuff all the time, and it's just what it is. So anyway, so we keep it doing. Michael Thomas is who he is. But Isaiah Foskey, a lot of people talked about Isaiah Foskey in the previous game, and trust me, that man heard that, man. That dude's really been stepping his game up ever since. So anyway, let's move on to the Saints kicker battle. And talk about that. The Saints could be trading a familiar face, and this is something that happened with what's your guy name from the he made mention of it. Peter King talked about the Sean Payton could be trading for Will Lutz, but and all this kind of stuff. I just don't. I mean, maybe I'm not seeing it that same way. I'm sorry, I don't see it like that. I'm serious. Now, first and foremost, let me just say this about the kicker thing before I get into Bob's article. He did a wonderful job on this article, by the way, talking about the options. I'm an abundance guy, right? I don't believe in minimalism. I just think if that's your spiel, and then that's fine, but I just don't think the universe operates that way. With me saying that, if you can have your cake and eat it too, so to speak, like in these rare situations where you can have both things, you can have both things if you want. You're not hurting for no money. You got $10+ million on your cap. The kicker battle is not that close where you have to say, oh, well, look like Group A might have them. No, it's not. Will Lutz is kicking really well. He's kicking like we expect him to kick. Blake Group A is a good young kicker, but he doesn't have any experience at the NFL level. Why does that matter? Because when you get into the crutch of some of these games that you need a good kicker to come in there and kick your ass into a win, you got Will Lutz who's done it before. He's healthy. There is no thought in my mind who I'm keeping. If Will Lutz is kicking all his kicks and all this kind of stuff, Will Lutz is the guy. He got 1 year left on his contract. We're gonna keep Will Lutz here, and then we still can keep Blake Group A because they can practice squad the guy. So you can start off the season with both these guys. So I don't know why it's a thing we got to trade Will Lutz. You don't trade a good kicker when he's kicking well with all the experience that this guy has. You don't do that. And then go into the season talking about having a deep playoff run with a rookie-ass kicker. Rookie-ass kicker means that he hasn't done it before, and he's going to be going into situations that he hasn't done it before. You do not want that to happen. You want to make sure you have the veteran. So I don't get what all this stuff is about the kickers right now. I don't get this foolishness right now. I just think this is like sidebar. This is Will Lutz's job, man. He's not kicking that bad, and we don't need no money. We don't need a 6-round pick. We need a good kicker that's going to kick the field goals when it counts. That's going to hit the extra points. So this might have been a thing last year if Will Lutz, if if we had Blake Group here last year, this might have been a thing. You know what I'm saying? But remember, just go back in your mind and remember what it was to not have a good kicker in that year when Will Lutz had that he got hurt and we had to go through that season. I mean that season. That's that season without a good kicker, and we was on the carousel with all these different kickers who couldn't even kick 30-yard field goals or extra points. You remember all that? You remember how distasteful that was? We had to have one guy kick one game, and then the next game he'll kick and miss 2 field goals. He'll hit 3 field goals the first game. Then the second game he'll miss 2 field goals. Remember all that ugliness? Remember the Tennessee Titan game when the guy missed 2 field goals in the game? You remember that? So, like I said, man, a good kicker. You find yourself a good kicker. Will Lutz is one of the best kickers in the game. He had to fight off the core. We know he's healthy. He's kicking like a champ. Group A practice squad, the guy. Okay, that's just that's just practice squad, the damn guy. Anyway, let's get into Bob's article right here. Y'all hit the like button for me if y'all hadn't, man. All right. So anyway, close kicking competition for the Saints to come down to the wire. Here's some potential options for the player that doesn't win the job. So Bob is on the scoop. He says they have a legitimate competition at kicker. Incumbent 8-year veteran Will Lutz, 29-year-old Lutz, second in franchise history in points scored, second in France. That's why I like Bob, because Bob reminds you of how important Will Lutz is. Second in franchise history in points scored and extra points made, and third in successful kicks. Anybody want to guess who's first? His 84.6% field goal percentage is the best in franchise history. Let me read that again. That's why I always give it to Bob. He always reminds you, hey, man, remember Will Lutz? He's only 29 years of age. He's second in history, in the Saints' history, of points scored and extra points made. Third is successful field goals. His 84.6 career field goal percentage is the best in franchise history for a kicker who's played more than 18 games. We have freaking Martin Anderson here. He also holds the single season franchise record for total field goals made and successful kicks from 40 to 49 yards. That's the money time. And over 50 yards. All right. Challenger Blake Group A, the upstart undrafted guy. Group A kicked his first 4 years at Arkansas State, converted 96% of extra points and only 74.4% of field goals. All right. That's 74%. That was when he was with Arkansas State. He went to Notre Dame in 2022 and successfully made all of his 49 extra points and just kicked 73.7%. So slight percentage dip on his field goals. His 91 points and 14 field goals were the best among independent schools after leading the Sun Belt Conference in both categories prior. Good and commendable statistics nonetheless at the collegiate level. Both kickers have been outstanding throughout training camp, nearly perfect on their attempts. Which kicker doesn't get chosen by the Saints has performed well enough for the team, probably won't be able to bring him to the practice squad. If he's released, they'll likely snatch up by another team. Won't be Will Lutz. If Blake Group is freed and he clears waiver, you add him to the practice squad, it's a possibility. We can try to do this here thing. Because it's when all those guys get cooked, they're gonna have quite a few guys that get released at the same time. It's quite the possibility that I'm pretty sure it happens every year, that when people start getting the release and they checking the waiver wires, the next thing you know, they end up getting some other guy that they like that was on another team that'll fit you a little bit better. So we have some jostling going on, but sometimes those guys do fall through and you can sign them to the practice squad. So, that's one of the things we got to look out for. But anyway, we'll see. All right, so Peter King of NBC Sports suggests that either Lutz or Group A could be traded to the Broncos and the Saints. Who gonna give Group A? You gonna give a 6-round draft pick for Group A? An unproven, undrafted guy? No disrespect, but I'm pretty sure there are other kickers in the league that might be kicking right now. We don't know about them in terms because we're not paying attention to the undrafted kickers on other people's squad because I know they are there. So I mean, I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me. But anyway, the Peyton is interesting. That Peyton is interested in New Orleans. Should come to no. Of course, he will be interested in Will Lutz. Of course, he'll be interested. But I'm not giving you Will Lutz. You got enough up there already. Shit. Win with what you got. All right, the move makes sense for Denver, right? For them, cutting Brandon McManus this offseason. The Broncos had kicking issues throughout the preseason, so I guarantee you, this is Sean Payton leaked this shit out here. All right, so anyway, former New Orleans kicker Brett Mayer, an injury replacement for Lutz in 21, has been just 2 of 4 field goals this preseason. Meyer also doesn't have nearly the range that Lutz does. Upon being released by Baltimore as a rookie, Lutz signed with Payton and the Saints in 2016. Shout out to John Harbaugh, because John Harbaugh called Sean Payton. Him and Payton are good friends. He called Payton and told him, hey, I got a guy here. 2016, I remember Payton was talking about this, how Will Lutz came to the Saints. And I love the story that he told. He said Harbaugh called him and said, hey, man, we have this guy right here. I know y'all need a kicker. And he was talking about Will Lutz because Will Lutz had a real good battle against Justin Tucker, who for several years was the NFL's best kicker. He was the money time guy. Justin Tucker was one of the best kicker in the NFL for a long period of time. I don't know if to say now, but he was money, the Baltimore kicker. And Will Lutz gave him a run in 2016. Harbaugh said, hey, man, I got this guy for you. So Sean Payton brung him in. Y'all remember Payton brung him in. He added him to the practice squad at first, and then like less than a week later, he was added to the active roster. So that's I kind of remember how Payton told that story, how we ended up getting Will Lutz. So that's why we always give a shout out to Harbaugh, because it was him that called Payton and said, hey, man, come here, take this guy and go do some great things. So anyway, Payton might prefer Lutz because of the familiarity, but either he or Group A are an upgrade over Meyer. Now, with trading Group A or Lutz really makes sense for the Saints. Lutz is coming off his worst year. Productivity-wise, it was just 1 year off of the injury, the core injury, when he kicked 74.2%. Very low, even beyond his rookie and his sophomore year, well below. He was also coming off season-ending surgery that cost him all of 21 and was working with a new holder, Blake Gillikin, and replaced longtime Saint Tommy Morstead. That is true, too. New Orleans also had 8 games decided by 3 points or less over the last 2 years. They went 3-5 in those contests. The kicking situation was abysmal with Lutz sideline 2 years ago. 3-5 in those contests of 3 points or less. That is vital. Very vital. I expect the Saints to stick with a reliable Will Lutz to enter the year. He looks fantastic. Even with his struggles in 22, still kicked a game-winning 51-yard field goal against the Falcons. He also nailed a 60-yard kick to tie the game late against Minnesota and narrowly missed a 61-yarder to win the contest at the final play. Will Lutz is entering the last year of his contract that will cost the Saints $2.4 million against the salary cap if they trade or release him. Denver, another potential trade partner, could theoretically pick up part of the contract, but still makes more financial sense to keep the clutch kicker for at least another year. Group A's performance should make him enticing to other teams, especially on a cheap rookie deal. Potential draft picks for either Group A or Lutz would certainly be tempting, but it would be better for the Saints in the long term to hold on to both kickers for a year. Have your cake and eat it too, baby. In 2020, then rookie punter Blake Gillikin was impressive throughout training camp. He created a close competition with incumbent Thomas Morstead, but didn't necessarily do enough to overtake him. With Morstead entering the last year of his contract at the time, Gillikin was placed on season-ending injury reserve with a sudden back injury. Bob gets it too. You remember that he was, when they started the active, because I remember people was asking me about this, because when the final roster came out, who made the cuts, the Saints had 2 punters on the active roster at the start of the season. Like, man, what's going on here? But eventually, what happened was all of a sudden the injury happened with Blake Gillikin, and he was put on the IR. That's the way the Saints kept him on the team. Very crafty moves by that old Sean Payton. All right. So anyway, that allowed him not to be signed by another team and over the team's punter in 2020. So a bit of overshadowing perhaps here, is that all of a sudden toward the end of the year, Blake Group A ends up having Blake Group A. It basically all of a sudden has a ingrown toe, and he's placed on the injury reserve. So be looking out for a mysterious injury of some sort with Blake Group A. You know, they might pull that old Sean Payton trick out their bag right there. This kind of hold his services. All right, this is certainly a scenario that could play itself out in New Orleans again. The Saints play their final preseason game this Sunday against the Texans August 29th is mandatory cut down date for all NFL teams to trim the rosters to 53 players. Cut day, big scissor, big rusty scissor day. So, yeah. So anyway, like I said, and Bob says that he agrees to, and that's how I look at the situation too. Because I was like, we're not trying to help out Sean Payton. We don't help Sean Payton out enough. We done did everything we supposed to do for Sean Payton. Don't y'all realize that when we gave him that extra pick that we really didn't need to give up? When we traded a 3rd round pick along with Peyton to Denver for him to have, because he had a lot of them draft picks that was missing. We did enough. We done sent them Dwayne Washington, all these old. You got Marquez Callaway up there. You got several other Saint players up there and coaches. We done did enough for Sean Payton. Sean Payton gonna have to find his own kickers and stuff now. Will Lutz, at least for this year, is our guy. We're gonna keep Will Lutz here. We're gonna keep his ass here. We don't want him going out there. But yeah, have your cake and eat it too, man. We both can. And like I said, it was a slick move by Sean Payton, having with Blake Gillikin that year. He popped up with a back issue and was and put on IR. That old slick Sean Payton. Anyway, let's move on, man. One more thing. Let's hear from Dennis Allen after his practice, man, on what he thought. Here we go. Put one in the chat.
Injury notes from practice today. Brian Breezy left practice he got poked in the eye. We'll get him evaluated. A.T. Perry missed practice with an illness. And Calvin Throckmorton and Marshawn Lattimore both came out here, got through individual, and then we pulled them out. So, again, I don't think either one of those I don't think any of that's real significant, but that's where we're at.
And just how positive it was. You told us yesterday to be back. He looked really strong out there also today, number 80.
Yeah, he had a good day today. So it was good to see. So yeah, it was a good day for Jimmy.
Dennis, when you were dealing with the crowd noise, was that to help the defense with communication?
It's a little bit of both, right? I mean, we had to go on silent count offensively, which we have to be better at. And then also, defensively, you're going to have to communicate in the crowd noise. And look, the biggest thing is we got to be able to operate those situations and not beat ourselves. So there's some things that obviously we got to get cleaned up, but we'll continue to work some of that.
And dealing with that crowd noise, could that be also that you would start the music sooner when the offense is in the huddle trying to call a play?
Yeah, Bobby, we could potentially do that. Obviously, yeah.
Communication.
Yeah, the whole deal. Yeah, the whole deal.
What kind of camp has Malcolm Roach had? I mean, we've heard his teammates say time and again how valuable and how versatile he is.
Yeah, look, I think he's had a good camp. I think he's a lot more sudden and explosive than maybe where he's been at in years past. So that's been good to see. I think that's a player that's gotten better throughout this camp.
Dennis, we saw Shaq had that really good game in the preseason game. What have you liked about how he's building on that?
I think he's just progressing. He's a guy that small school guy that came in here. I don't know if he knew whether the ball was pumped or stuffed when we first started out, but he's worked extremely hard. He's gotten in the playbook. He understands what he's supposed to do, and he's made some plays down the field. So that's been good to see.
It's kind of beneficial too. Like he's a big guy. You want to see guys utilize what they've got.
Yeah, and so he's made some plays in a contested environment, and that's I think that's big for the bigger players, the bigger receivers. He's going to be a guy that's going to have to win some contested catches, and he's done a good job of that. I think a little bit of all of it. I think he's gotten a lot better. I think he's improving. He's not the finished product yet, but yeah, I think I've seen some significant strides in the last, call it 10 days to 2 weeks.
Coach, how are you dealing with all those penalties? 14 on Sunday, 8 the previous week?
Yeah, I think I addressed that yesterday. We watched every single one of them, talked about what we could do better. Talked about the pre-snap penalties being something that we totally control, so we'll continue to work on that.
Dennis, follow up on Boston. I know he's still incredibly young and work in progress, but what are the next steps? Kind of talking you through what you want to see from him?
Say that again? I'm sorry.
I know Boston
Yeah, I think probably the biggest thing when you look at the last game, I think it's the finish. I think there was a lot of good things that I saw, on the initial part of the play. There's a few plays that I'd like to see him be able to finish better. So I think that's probably the next step for him.
Confident Jimmy's medical situation is clear now, and he's figuring out how he's good.
Yeah.
Dennis, now with putting the medical situation aside, are you impressed at how fast Jimmy's gotten back into football shape? And I mean, is he back to kind of ramp him up? Do you feel like he's back to where he needs to be?
Yeah. Look, I thought he looked good today. I think we're going to keep evaluating that, but certainly that was good to see the type of day he had today. He's a big target. And made some plays in a contested environment, a couple of plays across the middle, a couple of red zone plays. So things that I've seen him do in the past, I saw him doing today, and that's a good sign.
Dennis, you have addressed, I think, this earlier, but it seems like that he's progressed like Carl Grandis and Daniel Passio, like he seems like he's always been disruptive.
Yeah, look, he's done a good job for us. He, along with a lot of the other guys, on the defensive line, we've had a lot of batted balls, and whether it be in practice or game situations, it's something we hadn't had a lot of in the last few years. So that's been good to see. I think he gives us some versatility in terms of being able to play on the edge, also play some inside. So I think he's a valuable piece to what we're doing defensively.
Dennis, just a logistical thing. Will Alvin go on the suspended list at the same time you cut down?
I think that's my understanding as we sit here right now. Hadn't been something that we talked a ton about, but we still got a few days before we get down to cut downs.
With the joint practices not happening, does that affect the plans in terms of maybe snaps for starters?
Look, again, I kind of addressed that yesterday too. So, no, I don't think that has any effect on what we do in the game.
With that 53-man roster cut down looming, what's the big thing you're looking for some of the guys that are fighting for spots? Is it more about special teams, or are there other ways that guys
I think it's a combination of things. We take all those things into account, and if a guy's not getting significant snaps on offense or defense, he's got to add value on game day. Well, how do you add value on game day? You have to add value through special teams. So I think all those things are taken into account.
When you're building that, are you building the roster out looking at starters depth and then kind of filling out the rest, or is it kind of a position by position look? How does that actually get looked at from the coaching perspective?
Well, I think you're looking at the total picture in terms of the football team, and the individual position coaches typically are kind of looking at their position and what fits for their position and the roles within that particular group. Coordinators are looking at their side of the ball and how does it affect their side of the ball. Obviously, Riz is looking at special teams, and myself, Mickey, Michael, Kai, Jeff, we're all kind of looking at the whole totality of the team and how everything fits. No, I mean, he's going through the rehab process, so that's all I got.
We saw light days for Cam and Ramchick. Were those just vet rest?
Yeah, vet rest days.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks.
Thanks, Steve.
That's so Dennis Allen talking game right there. A lot of good game there from Dennis. As we move forward, man, let's take a look at the Saints depth chart. He made a lot of great commentary on some of the stuff and the assimilation of the roster and what they're looking at now. Last year wasn't, there was a couple of decisions that he made with the roster, which kind of made me scratch my head. And I don't think you'll agree. Rarely do we agree with every roster decision that, these guys make, depending on what they see in the group. Like some of the more pressing decisions come down to like what the linebacker position is. We talking about, a lot of people believe Jalen Smith, he should make the active roster. Zach Bowen more than likely is going to make the active roster. And a couple of the young guys like the Anthony Orgies and the Nick Andersons, guys like that will more than likely fall to the practice squad. But some of these guys have to play special teams. We know Zach Bowen played, he played special teams before. So we see that. Another question is, as we take a look at the wide receiver depth chart, like there's a lot of people, like we talked about James Washington, we talked about as it's starting to be whittled down, we talked about Brian Edwards and James Washington. Out of those two veteran wide receivers are gone. Kiki Cote was here competing with Lynn Bowden Jr. He's gone now. So you have guys that are stepping up behind the top three guys: Michael Thomas, Chris Olave, those gentlemen. You're looking at Keith Kirkwood, who caught a touchdown in the matchup against the Chiefs in the back of the end zone. He had a really good day today. And Keith Kirkwood is looking like old Keith Kirkwood. If you remember Keith Kirkwood, when he was here with his first stint with the Saints, he went to the Panthers and they just messed the, kind of put their losing funk on him, and he had to shake all that off back in the black and gold building. But Keith Kirkwood is looking like what we remember him to be. Because I remember we got Keith Kirkwood back last year, and I was like, yeah, man, we got Keith Kirk, but it wasn't the same Keith Kirkwood. It was, went over there and got mussed up by the Carolina Panthers, and he came back to the Saints, been playing a lot better. Looked a lot better in the last several weeks, and he's been doing a really good job. A.T. Perry is another guy that's stepped up and had some really solid games, the Chiefs games. Last game, he had a pretty decent outing, not as perfect as his first preseason matchup, but he's done what the Saints have asked of him to done. And he has a willing personality. Shaq Davis is a guy that really came alive, and Shaq Davis at one point was listed as a guy that was toward the back end of the depth chart. But we knew when we looked at Shaq Davis, when we was doing the scouting work on Shaq Davis, which is what he's good at, attacking the ball at his highest point. He also, I think he has 4.5 speed, big physical guy that you with a massive catch radius, and he exhibited those qualities in practice and also in the preseason matchup when Jameis went down to him with that 42-yard touchdown throw. I mean, not touchdown, but the play to get him set up for a score was Jameis pointed and just got the ball down to big Shaq Davis, such a huge target. So that's a part of the interesting guys that are there. I know Lynn Bowden Jr. got kind of banged up in the matchup in the last preseason game. Jontre Kirkland's really fighting for a spot here. Quan Baker had a few moves in training camp as well, but not as far out there as the guys that I mentioned, like A.T. Perry, Keith Kirkwood, and Shaq Davis. Those are the guys that's really flashing for the black and gold right now. Now, my question in terms of, I'm going to just talk on this and then we're going to get on up out of here. I ain't going to hold y'all after 12. So this is the thing, like, it's going to be a tough decision. Whoever one of the, and I don't know if it's one of the family members mentioned, man, we might keep 6 wide receivers. I don't know if they keep 6 wide receivers, just to be honest with you. I think 5 is probably where it is, but we'll see how it all matches, because at some point you're going to have a kick returner, punt returner that comes out of those wide receivers. Shaq Davis is not a punt returner, even though he played special teams in college. He hasn't done any of that. Maybe the Saints will, and I'm pretty sure that we'll see an insight in terms of the wide receivers of what the Saints do against the Texans in that regard. We're going to see some movements there, because we seen last game they put Hugo Amadi back there to return. And I was like, okay, what's going on here? And Lynn Bowden got a lot of work because they're looking at Lynn Bowden. Lynn Bowden is the guy that the eyes test, in terms of the eye test, that he's the leader for the kick return, punt return position. You do not want Rashid Shaheed in that capacity, because he's your third best wide receiver. So one of the 4 or the 5 wide receiver spot has to be reserved. More than likely, the 5 receiver spot has to be reserved for a kick return, punt return. That's Lynn Bowden. So we'll see what the Saints mindset on that. But yeah, A.T. Perry, Keith Kirkwood, and Shaq Davis, those are the 3 guys behind Thomas, Olave, and Rashid Shaheed that are really putting in some work for the wide receiver group. That's really interesting. Let's kind of move over and talk about the running back room now, fam. The running back room, man, at first was looking all good. Then all of a sudden, it wasn't looking too good, right? We know Jamal Williams is good. We know Kendra Miller had a little issue, but he appears to be fine. Kirk Merritt still has a hamstring issue that he's fighting through. And Kirk Merritt could change things in terms of who the Saints decide to keep in terms of the wide receivers if he was healthy, because Kirk Merritt was a guy that played that had some some ability, or he has some experience at the return level. The Saints have used him in that capacity. So he has a hamstring issue. He's limited. Darrell Williams has an issue, but Ellis Merriweather is rolling right along. So we usually, like when you get to a Wednesday or so, the Saints may make a decision to bring somebody in here that could possibly help them kind of keep things going. But it doesn't appear that the Saints are going to do that. Look like they're going to stay with what they have, and we'll see how it all kind of shakes out from the running back room. But yeah, man, it's going to be interesting. Of course, the Saints could also use Taysom Hill as a running back if they so chose to to do that. So I mean, and also if Lynn Bowden decides to make the team, the Saints could have a a role like remember they had Keith Kirkwood doing running back and wide receiver stuff. We can possibly see them make a move like that. We seen Rashid Shaheed get back there and handle reverses for the Saints. So they have a multitude of different, you know, ideas offensively speaking that they can kind of shift to if they need to because they have so many offensive skill players that's versatile. So I mean, it'll be interesting to see how the Saints deal with it from the wide receiver and running back perspective in terms of all the stuff that's happening to the black and gold. But I think a lot of the other stuff is pretty much going to work itself out. Like the linebackers, we know how basically that's going to ferret itself out. We know pretty much got a feel on the defensive land in the interior guys. The cornerbacks in the is another caveat to it of who makes it. But it appears to me like for that final cornerback position is down to Hugo Amadi and Isaac Yiadom. Yiadom has had a pretty solid training camp in preseason. Fry, he habitually gets burnt in practice. Guys score touchdowns on him. Smoke Monday didn't flash enough, so I'm probably anticipating Smoke Monday hitting the practice squad. Anthony Johnson had some plays early on, but not so much. Troy Pride got his pride snatched. He played hard, but sometimes it just don't line up for you. Jonathan Abram didn't flash enough for me, but we'll see how all this stuff plays out going forward. So just an early look at this stuff. And in terms of the Will Lutz thing, I still, I think that's just more stuff to talk about to create stuff to write about. It's something really good for just the writers to have something to kind of share with the Who Dat Nation. But when it comes down to it, you don't want no rookie kicker. You want to have a guy that's been through it. And like Bob laid out all the accolades that Will Lutz done in the black and gold building, you will want to make sure if he's healthy and he's kicking good and he is healthy and he's kicking and hitting all good and from the kicker position, you don't want to disturb that. You feel me? All right, so shout out to the fam, man. Appreciate y'all being in this thing as well. Much love to all the family members out there in the stream, man. Listen, Tuck says, if Lutz paid more than Jamal Williams. I looked it up, and Jamal Williams makes what, $3 million a year? He got a 3-year contract, $12 million for 3 years, basically break down at $3 million a year. Will Lutz remake, and the Saints got his last contract. Well, he had 1 year left at $2.5 million with $1 million signing bonus, just over $1 million signing bonus, and he got the roster money of $450,000, so right under $500,000. But his original deal that he signed with the Saints was a 5-year deal worth $2.2 million, and it basically averaged out at $4 million before the Saints kind of hit that thing. But it averaged out at $4 million a year. So, you got Jamal at 3 per year, and then Will Lutz's contract averaging over 4 a year. And he does have a $4.1 million cap hit. So that's another reason why to think about. Oh, no, we're not going to talk about trading Will Lutz to help Sean Payton out. The hell with Sean Payton, man. The hell with him. He shouldn't have took his ass up there to Denver, man. Complaining about the other guy. Don't try to use that man as a scapegoat. You went up there talking about you could fix Russell Wilson. Go ahead on and fix old Russell. You give him a running back in your system. You thought just your system can do all this kind of stuff. But you know what, fam? That's going to be interesting because I'm going to be watching Denver and see what Sean Payton does with Denver. Because I think, and I don't know, man, Russell Wilson doesn't seem the same. I remember Richard Sherman, man, at times. Richard Sherman was kind of going at him. Y'all remember the times that Richard Sherman was going at him? Y'all remember that? Talking about garbage and all that. I don't know. Sometimes I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know. That's Sean Payton got to figure that one out. All right. Anyway, shout out to the fam. Much love to everybody. What's up, LaShawn? What's up, LaShawn, baby? How you doing? All right. What you doing up this late, woman? Shout out to you. Good to see you. I haven't heard from you in a while. All right. Shout out to my dog Slim. Big ups to everybody, man. Appreciate you Godson, God body. Shout out to you, fam. Appreciate you. All right, Tuck says silly question. Q. No, it's not. See, none of it's silly question. No silly. What's up, that boy alone? Shout out to you. Not a silly question at all, man. But I'll tell you one thing, that when you get down to the meat and potatoes of the Saints team, and listen, fam, I'm gonna just be honest with y'all. Y'all know when it comes down to it, the talent level of the team, they spent a lot of money in positions of need. They felt like they needed an upgrade at the quarterback position. You turn around and got Derek Carr. You bring him here. The Saints did a wonderful job just adding all of the pieces to the offense that they did, getting Jamal Williams to help out with Elvin Kamara, drafting Kendre Miller in the 3rd round, giving the security blanket of Jawan Johnson, the NFL's best kept secret, Foster Moreau, who he's familiar with, Taysom Hill, Jimmy Graham popped up and said, hey, man, let me help y'all out. The only questions I have going into the season for the Saints are questions of, I guess, of the mental persuasion. Like, how disciplined is this team? Because we've seen a lot of pre-snap penalties and stuff happen last year. And remember with Elvin Kamara, this is like when I do these shows, man, it always flashes back like before the season. I have the same thought process that happens like before the season started, because even though I'm enthused, like you guys are, I'm enthused about the start of the season, right? I love the talent. Like last year, we were very enthused. Remember Jarvis Landry and Tyrann Matthews signed right within the same time frame, and we were really excited about that. Having Jarvis Landry and Tyrann Matthew and Jameis is, and then the success did not translate into the season. All of the good energies from the offseason did not make it into the end season like we wanted, and the Saints were basically fighting from behind to make things pop and shake. So
He ain't lying.
So what it came down to now is, now we got this time around, he's $150 million quarterback in Carr, and all of these fantastic people, not to mention Mike Thomas is healthy. Chris Olave has a 2nd year. Rashid Shaheed in the 2nd year. Saints have considerable depth at the wide receiver position if injuries do impact the team. Question is discipline and intelligence, football intelligence. And I mean football IQ in terms of having the intelligence to operate a disciplined game plan, keeping the pre-snap penalties down or damn near non-existent, because Dennis Allen did allude to that and say that we can control pre-snap. Now, all the other stuff is a part of the game, and I agree with him to a degree. But the pre-snap stuff, that's 100% on the team. That's tied to the intelligence and the discipline level of the coaching staff, or if they beating that in these guys' heads, if they're not tolerating the stuff. Remember what Elvin Kamara said, fam. Kamara said that when guys was false start, jump off sides, they wouldn't tell him anything. He said nobody told him or checked him. You remember he said that? He kind of gave us that little gem during his things. Like guys would jump off sides, nobody would say nothing. They're just like, okay, let's run it again. No, none of that, man. So you seen Dennis Allen was actually fussing at people. That's what you got. I don't much cuss him out, but actually let them know, listen, bro, get your head in the game, man. What's going on here? What's da. And that's where my thought process is, because the Saints have the talent. This team is talented enough to have a very deep playoff run. I dare not say the S word. I dare not say that yet, simply because I want to see how disciplined this team is. We know they have leadership around the team, but we had leadership around the team last year and the leadership disappeared. I didn't think that was going to happen. That's the first time that I seen on a Saint team where the leadership disappeared, where Demario Davis went quiet and started coming up with, Jesse Jackson type speeches about keep hope alive and all this. I'm like, dude, you're on a sinking ship. The ship is on fire. One side of it's already enough, and you're sinking right next to the Titanic. If you look to the right of the ship, half the boat, that more than half of the boat's in the water. You look to the left, that side's on fire. You're in the middle playing a violin, singing, keep hope alive or whatever. No, dude, you do something. So I mean, that's what I'm saying. I'm optimistic, but there are intangible things that really solid teams, really good teams have that take them past other teams to the promised land. Leadership is a part of it, but a discipline, attention to detail. Do we have that? Do we have that? Is Dennis Allen has enough people around him that covers up for some of the things that he's lacking? Attention to detail. We know Dennis Allen's not really good with that attention to detail thing. You know, he got guys helping him there. So does he bridge the gaps on some of this other stuff, the intangibles that you need to have to beat, you know, other teams who got really good coaches that got Super Bowl rings? Because you're going to run up against these guys and their teams that been into the thick of it and are disciplined, and that will let you beat yourself. You see what I'm saying? So that is yet to be determined, and that will reveal itself as the season goes into it. We'll find more about our team together. So that's some of the stuff that I have from a talent perspective. Just speaking about looking at the talent of the overall team, the Saints are good enough to have a very deep playoff run. We talking about deep, but discipline and those attention to detail and all the little small stuff that, you know, that begets all of the winning and keeps the winning, like, you know, being strong in the mind and discipline and focus. Even though we might lose this game, the next game we snap to it and make things happen. That's a big part of the challenge, because the man, you know, like I said, things could change. We'll see. Good team. We got a very promising team, talented team, but the intangibles, that's all the thing I got. Anyway, so with that being said, fam, listen, I'm going to get ready to jump out on that. Listen, yeah, exactly, Snum. Yeah, them penalties are, yeah, and that's most of the time, that's how all of this stuff just pop and shake. I mean, like I said, I love what they're doing in the off season, but I done been doing this for a while. I've been a black and gold man for a long time, and you know what I'm saying, I'm gonna just say it. You know, it's just like, you know, I got to hit the button on this one, fam. Y'all know what I'm about to do, right? Yeah, I hit that Glenn Jones on him. All right, so anyway, with that being said, let me get on out of here, man. I appreciate y'all listening to me tonight, man. We'll be back tomorrow on the Who Dat Nation, the Who Dat United, Who Dat Nation United Thursday stream, man. We'll all be in the building tomorrow. The Nola Bros, Hoodie Jube, and Randolph Dolph 17 from the Keeping It Real Who Dat podcast, baby, will be representing on Who Dat United on Thursdays. You know how we doing it, man. We representing the Who Dat Nation United, one force, one voice, one movement. We in the thing. So y'all support the family members. Feel free to, if you're not a subscriber, also feel yeah. I can't hit that high note, man. Glenn got that, man. He go, I can't do that. I can't. Bust it for him, Glenn. Do it for him, brother. And he held it too, man. That boy cold. All right, so I'm gonna holler at y'all on the flip side, man. Much love to the fam. Y'all feel free to go to the whodatdaily.com, man. That's our website. Shout out to the writers over there. All the great articles. They're turning out articles every day. Please feel free to remember, we doing this. We're number one. We're an independent, man. We got our own writers representing. They're over there turning out articles on pro football, pro basketball, college football, boxing. They're doing a wonderful job. I'm so happy. Shout out to B, our editor-in-chief over there. She's terrific. She's finding all these great people that's doing all this great stuff. So support the whodatdaily.com. Support ProTVONE.com. That's our video site with all of the content from across all the spectrums. We're growing rapidly. Thanks to you guys' contributions of joining our Patreon, also YouTube membership family. We building something special, man, and we moving forward and we making it pop. So I'm gonna holler at y'all on the next one, man. Much love to the fam. Who dat? And
yeah. Boogie like Benson, I'm a who dat. I'm a who dat. Long as I'm living, I'm a who dat. Lose or winning, I'm a who dat. Sports Coma, yeah, this is where we do that. Where we do that, 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 Boogie like Benson, I'm a who dat. I'm a who dat. Sports Coma, this is where we do that. Where we do that. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Somebody please better help. Running this thing like Elf. I thank God every day I'm not a felt. Go to YouTube Live with Big Q and the guys. If you ain't ride or die, the bandwagon get flipped. Been marching in, that was way for the ring. I was yelling out your chain for the championship. Bucking on town, duck down. Falcons pluck, get shut down. Panthers ain't much touchdown. The vision really belong to us now. So much hate on the Saints, you could probably tell. Ever since Bounty Gate hit the NFL, when things seem fishy and you probably smell the crooked referees on Roger Goodell. Yeah, fucking like this and I'm a who that. Every day I'm living, I'm a who that. Lose or winning, I'm a who that. It's the sports coma, this is where we do that. Where we do that at. Where we do that at. Where we do that, where we do that, where we do that at. Boogie like this and I'm a who that. It's the sports coma, this is where we do that.
You're listening to the Sports Coma with Big Q and the guys on the PRO Media Network.
Shop is the platform's store where you can go and buy all the latest merch to support the platform. Available at the Pro Shops, we have dozens of hundreds of products available for you and your family. Unisex tees for men and women, hoodies and sweatshirts, tank tops, kids and baby items, long sleeve tees, mugs, pillows, wall art, bath bedding, face masks, phone cases, stickers, bags, fanny packs, socks, hats, and many other items. Please feel free to check out the Pro Shops. The link is in the description section below.
TheWhoThatDaily.com. That's right, TheWhoThatDaily.com. Your one-stop shop for everything New Orleans Saints, New Orleans Pelicans, LSU Tigers, even the top flight boxing news. So if you're a Who That and you're looking for a place to stay up on your team, TheWhoThatDaily.com is your site. TheWhoThatDaily.com for the sport Who That in all of us.